Good evening and welcome to El Oso Fumar Takes. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, live from Euless, Texas. We are bringing you tonight our 65th take. So excited to have you guys joining us tonight. It's going to be a fantastic time. Just so excited to be welcoming in our guests tonight. But before we get to that, obviously got to thank a few people. Of course, our sponsors. And our first sponsor for tonight is Drew Estate. The Drew Estate story is one of daring, heartbreak, and success, but most of all, one of passion for cigars in the country of Nicaragua, where we have been making cigars since 1998. Jonathan Drew and Marvin Samel are not your average cigar makers. Their story does not start in Cuba or with with fathers in the cigar business. It started with a dream, and through their can-do spirit and never say die attitude, made Drew Estate one of the premier cigar manufacturers on the planet. You can check out one of their newest cigars, the Herrera Esteli Brazilian Maduro, which features a dense plantation-grown Matafina wrapper over a Connecticut River Valley broadleaf binder with fillers from Nicaragua. Manufactured at the Drew Estate factory, the Herrera Esteli Brazilian Maduro was blended by Willie Herrera and is presented in 5 amazing vitolas. And we would like to take this opportunity to welcome in our newest sponsor to El Oso Fumar Takes, and I believe our guest tonight will be pretty excited to hear this. Our newest sponsor of El Oso Fumar Takes, and if you are listening via iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere the podcasts are being played, our audio content is brought to you exclusively by Cornelius and Anthony Cigars. Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars is steeped in tobacco tradition. For 150 years, the Bailey family has been a part of America's tobacco heritage, passionately caring for the land they cultivate in Keysville, Virginia. Cornelius and Anthony's devotion to the finest grown tobacco and foremost aspects of craftsmanship allows us to introduce the most exquisite cigars on the market. We invite you to enjoy our portfolio of premium hand-rolled cigars and experience our dedication to producing an exceptional product. Cornelius and Anthony, bringing you the exclusive audio content of El Oso Fumar Takes. So we are so excited to welcome Cornelius and Anthony on board as part of our team here at El Oso Fumar Takes. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome our guest for tonight, our 65th take. We welcome in Mr. Stephen Bailey of Cornelius and Anthony. Stephen, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Bear, and you are too. That introduction was perfect. I am a little curious to know who is going to be on episode 69. That's what I want to know.
Episode 69. I may or may not have that scheduled yet. Hold on one second. We might be able to tell you. Actually, you know what? Yes, I do have 69 scheduled, and I can actually announce this. We've got it confirmed. So it'll actually be the 69th take will actually be Mark Daum of Crux Cigars. You might know people might know him as Crux Design Guy. He's part of the awesome marketing that they do over at Crux Cigars, and really gonna, not to give too much of it away, but we're gonna hammer into the marketing campaigns and really talk about cigar how Crux Cigars has really built up their marketing campaigns and stuff like that. So it'll be fun. He's a brilliant design person, and he really knows a lot about what they're doing as far as the cigar manufacturing too, which he never gives himself enough credit for. But I'll be sure to give him a hard time.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you, and this is going to be a good time tonight.
Yes, I'm so excited. I was so excited, and I even said this is actually officially the first time we're meeting. And it was really exciting. We keep missing each other at these events, IPCPR or Lazona Palooza. A couple years. I didn't go this year, but we went last year, and I went last year, and we kind of missed each other, and we missed each other at the booth this past year at IPCPR. But we're so pleased to welcome you in as a guest tonight. It's just really fantastic to finally get to meet you. Having been smoking your cigars for a while now, and really kind of following the Cornelius and Anthony story, it's just truly a privilege to actually get to meet you tonight. So, but first off, before we kind of get into a little bit of the couple of the real long pieces of information that I wanted to get to tonight, I wanted to kind of give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of a foundational background for people who aren't as familiar with Cornelius and Anthony as I am. I wanted people to understand just how long your family has been in the tobacco business, that you are the fifth generation of the Bailey family to be in the tobacco business. And so, if you can, Stephen, take us a little bit back to the beginning and where it got started and some of those insights.
Sure. Well, it all started, at least the best we can tell. I mean, clearly there could be some stuff back there further that we haven't been able to tap into through ancestry.com. But we know that in the 1860s, my great great grandfather was growing tobacco within a 2 mile radius of where I'm sitting right now. My family has been in this area ever since then. In fact, we're still growing tobacco here. Right across the road from my office here is a large farm. It belonged to my great grandfather, my grandfather, and now my father. And you had mentioned fifth generation. My son is actually now in the business, so I almost think we can claim sixth generations.
I was gonna say, when's the sixth generation coming? But if they're already there, then that clearly needs to be updated. That it's six generations deep.
Yeah, we've got to get on the website and get that corrected. But yeah, my oldest son is quite a bit involved with the company. He travels a lot for us. He's at a lot of the events, and he seems to really enjoy it. And it's a good opportunity for him and for me, because frankly, it's pretty neat when you can work where you grew up. I mean, I literally live 9 minutes from here. This is my office. I've been in this office since 1994, but I physically grew up as a child 2 minutes from here, 2 miles literally up the road. So yeah, our family has always been in tobacco, at least as far back as we can tell. My own history, I grew up at the end of a tobacco row. My father, he was in the tobacco auction business as well. So Friday nights we would normally take the tobacco that we had taken out of the barn and carried over to the warehouse, and we'd stop and get chicken. It was just it's just part of our culture. It's who we are. And I've been asked over time, well, how did you guys decide to end up in the cigar business? And frankly, when I grew up, anybody in the tobacco business was considered good people. They were considered gentlemen. They were good people in the community. And, really over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen basically people turning or society turning on tobacco a lot. And, I was thinking, well, how do we really preserve this family's legacy long term in the tobacco industry? Because, there's something pretty interesting that's gone on here for a very long time. And that's really where the premium cigar business came from. And, the fact that we were faced with FDA controls, and I realized that there was only a small amount of time that we really had before, they were going to put a stop to anybody really creating anything new. So I knew if I was going to get in premium cigars and try to preserve our family's legacy, I had to hurry up and do it. And, that pretty much started me on the path to where we're at now.
So the timing is is something, as you mentioned, it had a lot to do with the way the FDA was, kind of crawling up everyone's back at the time and everything. But where exactly did was it a passion for creativity that really drove you to getting into the premium cigar business, or was it something that where you just weren't getting enough out of it, out of the regular day to day? Where did the passion for cigars start for you?
Frankly, it started because of creativity. It's a passion for creativity. And, basically my background is on the other side of tobacco products. And, that was taken, the creativity of that side of the business was taken away in 2009 when the FDA exerted control over the entire industry. But they really, focused their efforts on the things that, cigarettes and those type of smokeless tobacco. But all of that was a precursor for me, in my mind, what was coming for premium cigars. And I knew that it was an opportunity to get into a segment of the business that's viewed differently by society. And I also knew that if I didn't find some type of creative outlet, that I would end up, wasting money on stupid stuff. So it was a good place. It was a good place to invest money, was, in our family, in ourselves, in our story, and keeping it in tobacco, and keeping it in a segment of the industry that society is for still accepting to some point today.
You mentioned the people when you were growing up, that anyone that was associated with tobacco was considered good people, gentlemen, as you described them, and just really fantastic folks. I always say the thing about that I love most about this industry is the people. Would you say that it's no different from the tobacco people you grew up with, the premium cigar industry folks?
Very much similar. The people that I grew up with, that were in the tobacco industry and that were viewed as, folks in society that were well respected. I see the same thing in the cigar industry, and I see the same camaraderie that used to exist on the other side of the industry, and that's really the thing. The other part of the business that we thoroughly enjoy is there's the like-mindedness and the willingness to come together, no matter what your background is, no matter what kind of mood you're in, what your situation is. You can come together and we can smoke a cigar and we can become instant friends. And that's a pretty neat deal, actually.
I think that one of the things that I love most about the people in the industry is just how how truly supportive folks are of each other. I mean, this is a business like anything else, and of course, there's some healthy dose of competition, but I would characterize it as healthy competition, because there's so many factories that are making cigars for each other. You're buying tobacco from this person over here who happens to make cigars for somebody else. So inherently, it is a community, if not even more extreme to that of a family. Growing up, was it very similar, with the farmers and the communities around Keysville?
Honestly, no. Growing up for me was get in the field, hurry up, and don't mess around, and don't screw up while you're out there. And that's pretty much what it was. I mean, literally, Dad put me in the field when I was 10 years old, and that's where I learned life lessons at. I worked in the tobacco field from the age of 10 until I was 20 years old, and I spent a lot of time in the tobacco warehouses and tobacco processors all up and down the East Coast and up into Pennsylvania, where we bought and still do actually bought and sell and contract with tobacco farmers in the Mennonite and Amish communities. And, that was kind of my wintertime job. So, yeah, I don't know about all that. I'd say the wintertime stuff was a little bit more camaraderie because I got to interact with different company people and folks in the industry up there, Lancaster Leaf and those guys. But around the farm here, it was all about hurry up and get the work done. And it was so big, you never finished. I had friends that worked in the tobacco, and, they would work a half a day and finish what they had to do. And that was it. But here, there was never any finishing. In fact, it's 40 some years later and I'm still not finished.
Of course. So, I get asked this question. Stephen, you may not know this. I also work in retail for the premium cigar industry for Michael's Tobacco of Euless, and so the question I get, it's not the most frequent question I get asked. You could probably take a couple guesses at what the most frequent question I get asked is, but a question that I do get asked on occasion, it's been asked me several times, is, have you ever tried growing your own tobacco? And I kind of snicker, and they're like, well, why not? Why haven't you tried, your hand at growing tobacco? Without getting into the long of it, I suppose, Stephen, if you can describe for our audience just how difficult of a crop tobacco actually is to grow.
Oh, it's very difficult, and I think you almost have to look at it from a 30,000-foot view. And what is involved with growing tobacco? Well, there's a tremendous investment. I mean, if you're not on a family farm type scenario, if your job tomorrow was to go out and start a tobacco farm, you're going to spend a lot of money. You got to buy the land. You got to have the knowledge, which is something typically that's passed down. But the amount of land, the amount of equipment that's involved with it, the amount of dollars that's spent, and frankly, it's the biggest gamble on earth. Can you imagine getting up and starting in March, and you work from March until October? You don't know if you're going to even get paid or not. You don't even know if the weather is going to come along and wipe your whole crop out, or if you're going to make enough money coming back from your sales of tobacco to cover your expenses. And you have no idea what the weather is going to do, and whether the hurricane is going to come through here and wipe you out. There is a tremendous gamble, and farmers, tobacco farmers particularly, are a special breed of people, because there is a tremendous investment that goes along with growing a crop of tobacco, and then there's the big gamble that you may not bring enough money in to support your family and pay your bills back. So, and you're really not going to know that until November. So no paycheck or nothing from March until November, and your fingers are crossed that you're going to actually get enough money for your tobacco to, to take care of your family. It takes a lot of guts to be a tobacco farmer.
I try to describe that, and without having that firsthand knowledge, as you said, without having that knowledge that's passed around from generation to generation. That's something that I've tried to explain to people when they ask me if I've ever tried it, and have I honestly wanted the opportunity to try with a few seeds and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely give it a whirl. First of all, I think the Texas climate would probably just churn out the most rancid looking tobacco leaves that ever existed. But I'm up for the challenge, at least in a small contained area.
We need to get you some plants, and you just stick them in a pot somewhere, and just kind of pray over it every day and see what happens.
See what happens. See what happens. But you talked about gambling a second ago, but another gamble, so to speak, that happens in this industry are, we talked about the community and the people involved, but is who you decide to bring into the inner circle, so to speak. So who you decide to bring into the fold as far as helping you achieve this dream of making premium cigars and pushing them to market. And of course, this is leading to me down to the two factories that you decided to partner with, and which is La Zona, run by Eric Espinosa, Hector Alfonso, and Eric Espinosa Jr., and of course El Titan de Bronze, Sandy Covas's fabulous factory on Calle Ocho in Miami, are the two of my personal favorite boutique factories that exist out there. I think they make some of the most fabulous products out there. How did these partnerships? We'll start with La Zona, or actually, where did it start? Which one came first, and how did those relationships build?
Well, I kind of have to go back in time a little bit, and I won't name any names here because I don't believe in that. But I actually started having cigars made for me back in 2013, I believe it was, and I produced a product in the Dominican Republic, and the product was frankly quite miserable. It didn't turn out as we had intended, and there were issues there, and that was a hard and expensive learning lesson. I went from there to another manufacturer in the Dominican Republic and learned another lesson there. And it quickly got me to a point where, I came to the conclusion I was going to have to find somebody that was reputable, dependable, somebody that I could trust to some extent. And the two places that I had found in the Dominican were not it. So what I ended up doing was, I was lucky enough to hire Courtney Smith, and Courtney had the knowledge that I didn't have. I didn't know the manufacturers, frankly. I didn't know anybody in the cigar industry per se. And because she did, she's really the responsible one for pointing us toward El Titan as well as to La Zona. I was having a product made at El Titan in 2015, and the product wasn't ready yet for the show. But some of the product that I had made in the Dominican was at the show, and it was another disaster. And that because of that, I was ready to sit down and talk to anybody that I felt like would be dependable and honest and trustworthy. And that's when I met Eric. Courtney introduced me to Eric. We had supper, I believe, and within 3 days we were on the way down to Nicaragua. And it's just, as luck had it, he needed some more business, and I needed somebody I could trust to make cigars for me, and that's just kind of where it all started at.
So the with El Tin de Bronze, you guys have it's just if I believe I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong here, Stephen. You guys just have the Cornelius made at that cigar, and while the other projects you guys have come out with are all made at La Zona. What what's uh what's what sets the Cornelius project or the Cornelius line apart, other than the factory that you designated a separate factory to pursue that project?
Well, coming from my U.S. tobacco background, I had a hard time in my mind having products made everywhere except for the U.S. So I said I've got to have something made in the United States by a U.S. manufacturer, because I come from the U.S. and my products, our tobacco and a lot of the things that we've always done here has been in the U.S. and my family's heritage is here. So I wanted a product made in the U.S. And, fortunately, uh, you have to be a pretty special person to get in with Sandy and have her make cigars for you. You can't just show up there and do it. And again, because of the relationship that Courtney had with her, we were able to convince her to make cigars for us. And again, it was important for us to have my great grandfather's name, Cornelius, on a box of cigars that were manufactured here in the United States. Now, the downside of that, they cost more. The cost here in the U.S. are greater. The rollers cost more. The labor, everything costs more than it does in Nicaragua, and that's really why you have a difference in price point between the Cornelius and the lines that are made in La Zona.
So fast forward to this past IPCPR, where you release two very unique cigars that are very different for coming out of La Zona, and of course Hector Alfonso and Eric helped put those projects together along with y'all's own insight. So the Gent and the Mistress met with very high critical acclaim in the past few months as after their release. I've had several discussions with several people that I trust their palate better than my own, and humble brag, I'd like to think that I have a pretty good palate myself, and they say that the I've heard this several times. This isn't just from one person, that the Mistress is the strongest cigar that they have ever smoked. Was that your intent when you guys started with that project, was to make something, a powerhouse cigar that just ended up going up a notch, or how did the Mistress reputation begin?
Well, the way it all started is we had these two names, and we had developed these two brands in conjunction with each other, and we wanted to launch them as a pair. So we looked at it and we said, okay, we've got the Gent. So I'm seeing a smooth guy, a nice looking guy who's got all of his, everything's lined up for him. That's a product that's going to be a day-to-day thing that really is really going to excite a lot of connoisseurs out there without, an overpowering flavor profile. And, we also wanted a box press in that product because, we wanted the smooth lines that go along with the smooth man called the Gent. Well, we wanted the exact opposite of the Mistress. And, the objective really was to make a cigar that was as strong a cigar as there was on the market, because frankly, we hear it here constantly is, well, we like that cigar, but we want something stronger. So I finally got to the point. I said, well, we created the Venganza, and the purpose of the Venganza was really, we wanted a higher, that's it.
Yeah,
We
what I'm smoking right now.
more of a powerhouse type. And I had guys come back and say, yeah, I love that Venganza, but man, I wish it was stronger. So, it's just one of those things where you keep hearing that and you say, well, I'm gonna put the strongest cigar I can put out there and just see how people react to it. And I'm happy to hear that folks are saying it's the strongest cigar they ever smoked. But I'll be honest with you, I've had other people tell me that they wanted something stronger than Mistress.
Well, that's I guess the challenge gauntlet has been thrown down for you, Stephen, to figure something out on that. But
I'm not sure how I'm going to pull that off, but it's. I've had people say, it's we love this cigar, man. It's fantastic, but boy, couldn't you make it a little stronger? And I'm not. I'm running out of options here how to do that.
the gent now there is some confliction on this, and I want to clarify it, I guess, with straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak here, Stephen. The gent, is it limited quantity? It's not a limited edition cigar, but is it limited quantity or limited release? What type of release is it? Because the Mistress is regular production, correct?
The Mistress and the Gent are limited production cigars.
Limited production. Okay.
And the reason they're limited production is because I ran out of tobacco. And that's the bottom line. I mean, and there's only so much of the tobacco that we're using in those two products. And we're actually, scurrying and hustling right now with the farm community to get tobacco in so we can hopefully get both of those products into full production full time. That's our objective.
So going back a little bit to, first of all, I love the philosophy of, you being an American brand owner and an American tobacco farmer and wanting cigars made at an American cigar factory. Has there ever been a line of dialogue discussed to potentially, whether, on the small side of things, maybe like a project, or maybe just for fun, or maybe long term, to build out some of your area there in Keysville for cigar production?
We haven't talked about cigar production per se. We have been doing various experiments with different type seeds, cigar seeds here for the last several years. We haven't gotten to a point where we're confident enough in anything that we're doing here to put it into full production, because most of it is small and it's experimental. And that's really the direction that we're going in. We're interested in, I could take a seed. We'll pick a variety of tobacco, like a broadleaf is a good example, actually.
Okay.
A Connecticut Valley broadleaf seed. If you plant that seed in the Connecticut Valley, you're going to get a totally different tasting tobacco than if you take that same seed and carry it to Pennsylvania, which is not very far away, and grow it. You're going to have a different flavor profile. And, that all of that really fascinates me, because being able to take a seed that, let's just say a Cuban seed that's grown in Cuba now, and growing that seed here in Virginia and seeing what the difference in flavor profiles is, how I would be able to create something innovative and something within the lines that cigar smokers are somewhat accustomed to, but a little bit different twist to it to keep it interesting. I mean, there are lots of cigars on the market, but, honestly, and through blending, you can accomplish a lot. But if you really want to differentiate yourself, you need to be able to create something, in a Virginia soil that somebody else can't really quickly duplicate. So, that's interesting to me. It's fascinating, because I think it gives the cigar smoker something new to look forward to all the time.
It seems to be something that you keep going back to, is the creativity of it, and that's clearly what kind of drives you. It seems in this endeavor. With the looming deeming regulations of the FDA potentially really, cracking the whip on creativity and everything. What do you think will be, from your perspective, in a very general way, what do you think will be, not necessarily specific to Cornelius and Anthony, but just the industry in general, because you've had this previous experience with the FDA before. What do you think will be the creative outlets for cigar companies going forward if, the regulations were to come down as hard as they are presented currently?
Bear, that's a great question, and I'm not sure you're going to like my answers. I mean, it appears to me that the effort by the FDA is to mitigate and frankly do away with most types of creativity. I mean, their perfect scenario is Tylenol. Okay, every morning at the Tylenol plant, they flip the switch, and there's going to be exactly the same thing coming out of the end of that line in a bottle as it was last week, last month, and last year. That's their perfect model. And when you take tobacco that is the exact opposite of that, simply because the weather is different, there's just so many variables that there's no way that you can create that same scenario with a natural product. And it's inherently flawed approach to trying to regulate a product. And but it appears to me, from what everything I've seen, these guys are trying to take that creativity away. And frankly, I think they would be in a perfect world if there were like 10 different types of cigars out there on earth, and that was it, and they could manage that quite easily. So it's kind of scary, quite honestly. And my hats off to everyone in the industry that's trying to fight this, and they're trying to. And I know a lot of money is being spent, and I know lawyers are making a ton of money off of it, trying to keep that the creativity and the craftsmanship that comes along with premium cigars in the industry, because the FDA is definitely a threat to that.
It certainly is, and it's something that we've discussed on this show, and I've waxed on at length about. But turning this back a little bit more to the more positive, positive note. Keeping the theme of creativity here. You mentioned your drive for creativity, and clearly that's something you want to pursue within the Cornelius and Anthony brand. And you bring in two industry veterans in different rights. Courtney Smith, you just mentioned a few moments ago, and Todd Vance, who head up your sales team. When you saw the opportunity to bring these two folks specifically, and if you want to mention anyone else, please feel free. When you saw the opportunity to bring in industry veterans like these folks, what did you think you were getting, and then what was the result of what they've achieved so far for you and your brand?
Well, Bear, when you hire somebody new to come into your company, it's almost like getting married. You think the people to some extent, but you really don't until you marry them. And we've really worked well together, particularly Courtney and I. The creative side of all of that, it really meshes well. Todd came on a little bit later, but his relationships out there. And you don't know. When I hired Todd, I had no idea, quite honestly, what I was going to get. And it's natural in any business. You can do all the groundwork and follow ups and talk to references and all of those things, but until you actually get the person in here and get them working, you don't know what to expect. But both of them have done a tremendous job, and it's really. They're the ones to thank for the success, because Todd's out on the ground every day, and Courtney is trying to figure out the next way to build this widget every day. So it's really up to them, and they've done a fantastic job getting us to where we are now.
From Courtney's creative perspective, I love the artwork that's done, the artistry behind the brand, the concept of the different lines, from the Venganza, the Mistress, the Gent, like these very vintage artwork pieces that go on the box and present each product and really showcase the identity. Because if you strip it down, if you strip the cigars down there, I mean, you could probably, the Ariel is a good example. The Ariel looks totally different from like the Mistress or from the Señoritas Sugars, for that matter. Those are the kind of two polar opposites in terms of just aesthetic, like looking at it from the outside. But the cigars are clearly identified by much more than that. By the labels are some things that that kind of there's a lot of great creativity within the industry within it, but I really like the consistency of the way that you guys have outlined it, but by still giving it a very unique identifier to each specific cigar. It's almost like, even though it looks similar with that, the top label, the label on my hat, top here on the Venganza that I'm smoking, the secondary bands is what indicates it. But even from the box perspective, they have a very, very unique identity. And each cigar smokes with a very unique identity. Was that something that you guys pursued together, or was that something that she kind of came up with on her own?
Well, what we did is, when we started this, we came to a conclusion that we started from we started from the perspective of the retailer, because the retailer is the venue in which I have the opportunity to introduce the product to the consumer. So, if we can't get the product on the shelves, then we can't succeed. So everything we did was built around the concept of trying to get as many cigars in a small space as possible. So that's why we did the stacked cabinet style boxes, and we wanted them to be consistent so that we would kind of build our own exposure on the shelf. So if you line those boxes up, you start to create a presence on the shelf that demands some level of attention. So, it really all started with the box design, the way the box was configured, and laying it out in a way that we could create a presence on the shelves.
And it certainly does that. I really, like I said before, I really like the presentation. I really like the way the design is laid out, and it's, like I said, it's very consistent, but it is still very unique in its own right. So clearly, family and heritage and lineage is a really huge part of the Cornelius and Anthony brand, hence the name even. So my question, this is kind of a fun question here, Stephen. Are we, is there a potential to ever see a Stephen Bailey cigar with your name on it?
I'm not gonna mess the public up like that. We'll come up with something better than a Stephen Bailey cigar, and that won't be real hard to do. But believe it or not, we actually have, we've got about 10 more brands on the shelf right now. And, and I don't know if we'll use them all or not. And we may add to that at some point, depending on how this whole FDA thing works out. But yeah, I mean, it's our intention to keep building on what we have. We're looking at our portfolio consistently, trying to figure out ways to add to what our offerings are. And some of that's going to be through, different blends, obviously, but some of that might be similar blends that are grown in different origins. So, we've really got ourselves positioned to introduce products really over the next 5 to 10 years, but they're all within the grandfathered blends that we've already have in place. So we're well positioned as far as new products are concerned and into the future. And as long as we can continue to be creative, and the consumers, the folks that are smoking the cigars, are still liking them, we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
So as I mentioned to you before the show, the Cornelius and Anthony Venganza, the Persuader, the Toro size, specifically, is the cigar that got number 7 on my 2018 top 10 list. And you mentioned that this was a cigar that you originally brought to market as strong, and you were still getting a lot of feedback that it wasn't strong enough. When you originally came up with this concept, was that the original intent, was to create a more fuller bodied cigar for the portfolio that already existed?
Yes, and that's honestly what we will continue to do. Is our objective is to listen to what consumers say, and try to supply them with what they're asking for. And that really drives all of our decision making. And that's where the Venganza came from. Daddy Mac was in the market. Everybody really loved the flavor. It's a great cigar, but they wanted something stronger. And that's really when we decided to come out with the Venganza to add to the portfolio, because the consumers are the ones that pay the bills here, and we want to try to provide them with whatever it is that they want.
So I'm curious with the aerial. So right now, and I've our viewers and listeners are probably sick of hearing me say this. They're sick of me hearing say about the Connecticut shade renaissance that's going on. But the Connecticut shades that are being produced, today are just not what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're a lot more complex and a lot different. When you decided to venture down that line of creating a milder blend, so to speak, what was the objective, other than creating a Connecticut shade cigar? What was the intent, or what were you looking for out of the end result?
It's funny because Courtney and I both, and maybe even Todd, I don't recall now, but neither one of us like a Connecticut wrapped cigar. So it was very difficult for us to create one, but we knew we needed one in the portfolio. So what we decided to do was make a different Connecticut, something that we enjoyed smoking, something with some flavor that didn't have that, that we use a word I probably shouldn't use on here, but this funky flavor that it has, and we were looking for a way to create a Connecticut.
I was gripping. I was ready for like a really like dirty word or something funky. That's
we called it all kinds of things, and really we have so much fun together when we're doing this stuff and laughing and joking and carrying on, and really that was another reason we got in the cigar industry. It's fun. I mean, it really is. But the objective with the Connecticut was to create a Connecticut that we like to smoke. And, we play with a lot of different things. And I went out and I sourced different wrappers, and I played with different things. And, Hector was involved. We were down in Nicaragua. We were playing with some other U.S. type tobacco in the product. And then we had to throw some Nicaragua. So it really was it was just a lot of fun trying to figure out, can we make a Connecticut that we actually like to smoke? And that's kind of where the Ariel came from was. And I love that cigar. And I've had, a lot of people that aren't even Connecticut smokers go, man, that is such a great flavor profile on that Connecticut cigar. It doesn't have that, that bitter aftertaste a lot of times.
It doesn't. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
No. Yeah.
And it is a lot more unique than some of the other Connecticut shades that I'm really enjoying that are on the market today. It still separates itself in that regard. So you mentioned Hector a minute ago, and Hector, has his hands in all these blends that he's doing for you at La Zona. As you're obviously involved, as is Courtney and some other folks too. Going back to if we can go back a little bit in the conversation with manufacturing the Cornelius at El Tito de Bronze, who has their fingerprints on that cigar and that blend? How did that kind of come to pass in terms of the end result there?
That's fun. That's a funny process too, because that was probably the first cigar that I was involved with actually blending. And there happened to be an expert or two down at El Teton the day we were working on that. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to get nobody in any trouble. But it was some real blend experts there that day, and we worked on a lot of different stuff, and we finally came to where we were satisfied with what the Cornelius was delivering. So that was fun. I actually learned a lot, and I realized that I knew more than I did when it came to blending, because my blending background comes from the other side of the industry. But you'll be amazed at how similar the two processes are to trying to get to a finished product.
So the last kind of question that I wanted to tackle here with you, Stephen, and again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. But before we say goodbye, there's kind of a fun question that I wanted to ask you. So again, we've talked a lot tonight about your family heritage and the lineage and your great grandfather Cornelius that started this endeavor back in 1866. Just a year after the Civil War, which kind of paints history in an interesting perspective when you think about it. Just 4 generations ago, the Civil War was going on in this country. So, but that's still a very, very long time, over 150 years that your family's been doing this and been in this business. And it's impossible to know this. That's why this is a fun question. If it would be possible for your great-great-grandfather Cornelius to see what you've done today with the innovation of going into the premium cigar industry, what do you think his reaction would be?
He probably want to have a drink. That would be my guess. I don't know. They say he was a real piece of work. He carried a pistol with him everywhere he went. And there's an old story that my grandfather used to tell about the time that the polecat ran him down the road, or a bobcat or something, in the middle of the night, and he was shooting and carrying on. So I think my great-great-grandfather was a trickster, and I think he had a drink once in a while, and I think he had fun. I know he carried a gun, so he had to be a pretty decent guy. So I think we'd probably sit around and laugh and joke and carry on for a little while. That sounds like what kind of guy he was.
That's awesome. I think that um the the thing that I really really enjoy about this show and talking to folks just like yourself, Stephen, is that um is not to use my own word to describe the word, but I like getting people's takes on everything. Their perspective means a lot to me, and
Sure.
so it's interesting to ask a question like that. You to explore the perspective of someone you've never met. It's impossible of you for it to meet, and it only exists in stories from stories that were told.
Yes.
And and um, and I think that as years go on, and in recent years we've lost some very great men in this industry. Carlos Fuentes Sr., Avo Uvasian, Senor Padron, and these titans of this industry. Who have been with us for so long. No one can live forever, unfortunately. And as time will go on, the stories will exist will be from the stories that were told to them and then passed on. And I think that that is something that is probably the most satisfying to me, that in this modern day history, social networking, digital networking, technology driven world that we live in, that there's still this wonderful industry that exists on a foundation and legacy of stories and lineage from the past. And that's why I really really enjoy it, and it was just an absolute pleasure to talk with you tonight, and I really appreciate the time. I know that this is late for you. You're on the Eastern Standard Time, and for you to make some time for me and our listeners and viewers, I greatly appreciate it, so thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, Baron. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. And look, man, you need to come to the farm. You just plan it next August, this coming August or September. You come on out here, and I know you're a history buff, and I've got some real history to show you. So the invitation's open. Love to have you, and maybe you can carry some plants back with you and see if you can keep them alive in Texas.
I appreciate that. I just might have to take you up on that, Stephen. It would be an absolute pleasure. I know Todd's been telling me that I need to get out there, and I definitely do. You'll probably be sick of me after 15 minutes of me nerding out on you, but I'm excited. I'm excited for the opportunity, and excited for the opportunity to work with you again. If you guys are listening to us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever podcasts are being listened to, our audio tonight is being brought to you exclusively by Cornelius and Anthony Cigars, headed by our guest tonight, Mr. Stephen Bailey, and we welcome him for our 65th take. This is our Blue Sapphire edition, 65 takes in the book. Yes, sir. It's fantastic to have been with you for all this long. We appreciate everyone's likes, shares, comments, and most of all, we appreciate your take as we share our takes with you each and every week. Next week, we bring to you Omar DeFrias of Fratello Cigars. Really excited for our 66th take, as he will be joining us next Sunday. So tune in for that. It'll be awesome and exciting. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to download. And as always, leave a review. And for always, guys, we really appreciate everything. So live from Euless, Texas, I'm Bear Duplessis. And guess what? We'll see you next time.